As Brother Dan said, we do have 4 chapters this morning. I always struggle with, as I'm doing my studying, how I'm going to go about presenting. And ultimately, during my studies, I think, they would just be a whole lot better off if they fired me.
Can't fire you when you volunteer.
Yeah. We're in Exodus chapter 28. The title of the lesson, as Brother Dan mentioned, is A New Way to Worship. The text is 4 chapters, Exodus 28, 29, 30, and 31. The key verse, Exodus 31:13, "Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, saying, Verily my Sabbaths ye shall keep, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that ye may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you." That's Exodus 31:13. The application, the student will learn that true worship involves obedience to God's instructions. As we look at religion today, religion has a lot of different ideas and thoughts for the worship of the Lord. But as we look at this morning's lesson, I think you'll find that God was very specific in laying out what true worship is about. The details that he gave were very specific. They're extremely detailed. And in fact, I think there were more details even that we're given here in Exodus, because several times in the scriptures, God told Moses that he would provide wisdom and knowledge and understanding for how to go about doing these things to those individuals that were involved in it. And so it was important that they followed to the letter exactly as it was detailed. That is completely opposite of religion today. Religion today is do what feels good. If you're sincere, that's good enough. But it's not ourselves that we're here to please. We're here to please God. He also points out in this that the Sabbath was extremely important. As we look at this, there's several times that it's mentioned that failure to adhere to the Sabbath would result in what? Being cut off. What's being cut off?
More or less
Banished. Some even interpret it as severe as death. Keep in mind, it was part of the 10 Commandments. And so, is it important? Is it important that we come together to worship God? Is it important that we come together to learn more about Him? Is it important that we come together as a people and as a group? Hebrews talks about it too. I think it very much is. So, I don't know if we'll get there. What I'd really like to talk about is more toward the end, so we may do some skimming through 28, 20. We'll see. I don't know. I always struggle to get there.
Can I add
Absolutely. You don't have to ask.
into your comment about religion today?
Yeah.
True religion is still as it's always been. When we speak of religion today, we can lump all others into one class, but there's only one true religion, and we're instructed exactly how to worship today in the same way they were instructed.
That's right.
God has always had an exact way, and it was the only thing that was acceptable, all the way back to Adam.
Yep.
With Cain and Abel, how that Cain's sacrifice was not accepted because it wasn't done right.
That's right.
And then this new way that we're looking at with today, if it wasn't done exactly as it
could result in the death of those that were guilty of violating it. The high priest, if the high priest went in and offered incorrectly, we should look at it this morning, but there were bells on the bottom of his robe so that they knew whether he died or not, due to failing to follow the pattern. So, to God, it's very important, and because it's important to him, it should be important to us too. All right, anything else? And you don't have to ask to add. Just jump in.
Well, I think everybody here understood what you were talking about when you said religion today.
Yeah.
But we have to recognize, we've kind of gotten to the idea that we think religion is bad. Religion is not bad.
Right.
True religion is the proper way to worship God.
Yeah. Yeah, and probably what I said is more of a shortcut. Maybe I should preference it with false religion. Ungodliness. I don't know. You know, I guess there's a lot of different things.
Religion in general.
Yeah, religion in general.
There's only one true religion.
Yeah. All right. Anything else before we get started? Okay. So as we begin, we'll see here, beginning in chapter 28, that there's guidelines that are given for the garments of the priest. We already had the tabernacle. Okay, and the instructions for how the tabernacle was to be built. And keep in mind that God was very specific about it because it was a picture of something. Okay, we think of the tabernacle as this tent. It was a tent, and that it had furnishings in it. It had the holy of holies. It had the holy place. There was the court out in front, and then the items in there. But every bit of it was specific to understanding of heaven and to what Jesus Christ, as our high priest, would do for us. And the sacrifices that he would... So, pretty much all of this really goes back to Jesus Christ. And Hebrews has a ton of commentary on it. I wish I understood it all. But it's important that it be exact as God established. Here in chapter 28, beginning in verse 1, "And take thou unto thee Aaron thy brother, and his sons with him, from among the children of Israel, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office, even Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, Aaron's sons. And thou shalt make holy garments for Aaron thy brother, for glory and for beauty." So here God is establishing the priesthood. The priesthood would flow through a certain lineage. That lineage was Levi, and Aaron here in particular, his lineage would serve as what? The priest. Yes. The others would service the tabernacle and different duties that were required of the tabernacle. But for Aaron's lineage, it was specific to the priesthood, beginning with Aaron and then flowing through his descendants. Here, Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar, his sons. And then verse 2 tells us that for them, they were to make holy garments. Holy is again what? Set apart, sanctified. For Aaron, thy brother, for glory and for beauty. Now, why for glory and for beauty? As they looked at it, this was, I hesitate to use the term representation of God, but it should be, it was for God, it was to please God.
They were representatives of God.
Yeah. So, and again, it was very specific. Verse 3, "And thou shalt speak unto all that are wise-hearted, whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office." Now, here, thou, who's speaking to Moses, shalt speak unto all that are wise-hearted, and whom I have filled with the spirit of wisdom. So, there's two statements here I want to focus on. Wise-hearted, indicating what? These were individuals that were what? Already.
They were attending to God's law.
That's right. They were attentive to God's law. They were law. They were submissive. They were seeking God, to please God. Not themselves. But they were seeking to please God. They were wise-hearted, but that wasn't sufficient in and of itself. Because he goes on, whom I have filled with what? The Spirit of wisdom. Holy Spirit working. Filling them with the Spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. Now, as I read through these instructions, I can get sort of an idea of what these garments might look like. As we read through the tabernacle and the materials that were supposed to be made, built, constructed, and there are certain elements that I understand, but these were skilled individuals, but even at that, did they have all the knowledge and understanding in and of themselves to fulfill what God wanted for them, from them? No. And so God filled them even further. Now, we actually had some ladies that made the high priest garment. I wish we had that today. We had a young man, about yay big, that they put it on so that you could see. And it was very interesting to see. We actually tried to use it for a program. The kid was a little bit too big. It didn't. But anyway, it was very specific. But even at that, to understand the details of it, the details were filled in by the Spirit. And that's what this is talking about. Filled with the Spirit of wisdom, that they may make Aaron's garments to consecrate him, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. And these are the garments which they shall make: a breastplate, an ephod, and a robe, and an embroidered coat, a mitre, and a girdle, and they shall make holy garments for Aaron thy brother and his sons, that he may minister unto me in the priest's office. So here is what they're to make. And then he's going to go into details here in making these. Verse 5. And they shall take gold and blue and purple and scarlet and fine linen. And they shall make the ephod of gold, of blue, and purple, of scarlet, and fine twined linen with cunning work. Now what's cunning work? Very fine work, artistic work. It was supposed to be the best. It was to be beautiful. It shall have the two shoulder pieces thereof joined at the two edges thereof, and so it shall be joined together. Now this is the ephod. Now what's the ephod? So it was an apron-like garment. It was clasped at the top. Okay? Clasped at the top. Verse 8, and the curious girdle of the ephod, which is upon it, shall be of the same, according to the work thereof, even of gold, of blue, of purple, scarlet, fine twined linen. And thou shalt take 2 onyx stones, and grave on them the names of the children of Israel, 6 of their names on one stone, and on the other 6 names of the rest on the other stone, according to their birth. Okay? So, by age. The 6 eldest on one stone, and then the last 6 on the other stone. Verse 11, with the work of an engraver in stone, like the engravings of a signet, shalt thou engrave the 2 stones with the names of the children of Israel. Thou shalt make them to be set in ouches, or settings, of gold. So you should be starting to see this was a very intricate, but also a very expensive garment for them to make. Verse 12, Thou shalt put the 2 stones upon the shoulders of the ephod for stones of memorial unto the children of Israel. And Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord upon his 2 shoulders for a memorial. Now, why did God give them this instruction? In particular, I'm talking about the 2 stones with the names of 12 tribes on those stones. Why did he give them this as a memorial unto the children of Israel? They shall bear their names, Aaron shall bear their names before the Lord upon his 2 shoulders for a memorial. Did God need to be reminded of who they were?
No, they did.
They did. They did. And if you walk away with nothing else, understand this. What God tells us to do, he tells us to do for whose benefit? Ours. When his word says, come together and worship, whose benefit is it for? Ours. When he calls us to service, for whose benefit is it? When he calls us to give of our time, our efforts, our belongings, whose benefit is it for? Ours. Ours. And we rob God when we don't do it, but we're also robbing and damaging ourselves when we don't. So,
this whole garment was, I mean, the tabernacle, everything is a pattern or a type of something.
yep.
And I mean, the high priest, we have only one high priest, and that is Jesus, King Jesus. Those stones was literally the priest carrying the tribes of Israel before God.
Yep.
That's what Jesus does for us today.
That's right.
He carries our names before the presence of God.
That's right.
Only way we can approach God.
And it wasn't just there either. As we move on, we'll see it was in the breastplate. It was repeated.
Yeah.
There were many of these things that were repeated several ways as a constant memorial, as a constant reminder to the people. Now, as you look back at what God established with Israel, you think, what an advantage to them, because they had the sacrifices and the signs of that were given to them in the tabernacle and in the priest garments, but also in the sacrifices that were presented. And yet for us, you look, we have the advantage, looking back, we have, even though we're not as familiar with the sacrifices and the tabernacle and all, we have recorded what Jesus performed on the cross. And we see the Old Testament signs and symbols. And it should provide for us a clearer path of understanding.
Only somebody else had talked.
Well, I'm hearing a lot of, yes, that's right.
When we really begin to think about the Old Testament sacrifices, it was a bloody mess, day in, day out, because, there wasn't just the Day of Atonement, there wasn't just one daily sacrifice, there was thousands of sacrifices daily. The blood was flowing,
Yeah.
When we think about it, what they did and what they did as a picture, it was gory.
Yeah. Yes, it absolutely was.
But then when we look at that and compare it, look what Jesus did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's described as when they hung him on the cross, his body didn't even look like a man anymore.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. Mentioned it before. They had to stand out in the heat while all this was being performed. It's not like today. We have this nice building. We can come. We sit down in padded chairs. We kick back. We sort of pay attention. We sort of know. We're in and out. It was completely different. We don't have the slaughterhouse smells. I mean, think about that. The blood that's spilled and the smells from all of that, from the multitude. And the sacrifices were morning and they were evening. So you didn't get away from it in the Old Testament worship. So it really was a bloody, gory.
And that's not counting the individual sacrifice.
That's right.
Someone's sin, because the law prescribed a way that they had to atone for their personal sin.
That's right. That's right. This was really sacrifice for the nation as a whole. Yeah. As a whole. So, all right. Anything else? Okay. I think we got down to 15, right? So we move on to the breastplate. Verse 15, and thou shalt make the breastplate of judgment with cunning work, after the work of the ephod, or similar to the work of the ephod. Thou shalt make it of gold, of blue, of purple, and of scarlet, and of fine twined linen shalt thou make it. 4 square, in other words, it'd be a square, all sides equal. It shall be being doubled. A span shall be the length thereof, and a span shall be the breadth thereof. I believe a span, 4 inches? Okay, I was trying to remember. Span shall be the length thereof, span shall be the breadth thereof. Verse 17, and thou shalt set in it the settings of stones, even 4 rows of stones, 4 rows. The first row shall be a sardius, a topaz, and a carbuncle. That would be the first row. The second row shall be an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. The third row, a ligure, an agate, and an amethyst. And the fourth row, a beryl, and an onyx, and a jasper. They shall be set in gold in their enclosings, and the stones shall be with the names of the children of Israel, 12, according to their names, like the engravings of the signet, the 2 stones that were there on the shoulders. Every one with his name shall they be according to the 12 tribes. And thou shalt make upon the breastplate chains at the ends of the wreathen work of pure gold. Thou shalt make upon the breastplate 2 rings of gold, and shalt put the 2 rings in the 2 ends of the breastplate. And thou shalt put the 2 wreathen chains of gold in the 2 rings which are on the ends of the breastplate. And the other 2 ends of the 2 wreathen chains thou shalt fasten in the 2 ouches or settings, and put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod before it. And thou shalt make 2 rings of gold, and thou shalt put them upon the 2 ends of the breastplate, in the border thereof, which is in the side of the ephod inward. And the 2 other rings of gold thou shalt make, and shalt put them on the 2 sides of the ephod underneath, toward the forepart thereof, over against the other coupling thereof, above the curious girdle of the ephod. And they shall bind the breastplate by the rings thereof, under the rings of the ephod, with a lace of blue, and that it may be above the curious girdle of the ephod, and that the breastplate be not loosed from the ephod. So, how many of you could sit down and make that? Understand exactly what it is? Well, I haven't done enough sewing and stitching to fully understand it. But a lot of it, I think, could be understood by those that make garments. But basically, that breastplate was 4 square, and it was doubled, so that it, I think it came up, this is the way I'm reading it, it came up front and back so that it was like a pouch there in that breastplate. And on the front of that breastplate were these stones as laid out here in their rows. Now, again, what were the stones for? What was engraved upon them? Names of the children of Israel. Again, there was no reason for the priest to fail to understand that what they were doing was not about them, but it was on behalf of the people. Okay? This breastplate had rings at the corners, and it was attached by chains. Okay? So Alan, correct me if I get any of this wrong. And so that's really what it's describing in detail. And again, it says here in verse 29, "And Aaron shall bear the names of the children of Israel in the breastplate of judgment upon his heart, when he goeth in unto the holy place for a memorial before the Lord continually." So it's set above, and the girdle that was described previously was beneath it. It was not covered at all by that girdle that was around. Verse 30, "And thou shalt put in the breastplate of judgment the Urim and the Thummim." That's a hard word for me to say. Urim and Thummim. "And they shall be upon Aaron's heart, and they shall, when he goeth in before the Lord, and Aaron shall bear the judgment of the children of Israel upon his heart before the Lord continually." In other words, going before the Lord on behalf of the children of Israel. Now, Urim and Thummim, what was that? We don't know. Yeah, there's some speculation that they may have been two stones. They were evidently used to help to determine God's will. The indication is that actually we'll talk about it a little bit more as we go on. But evidently that pouch that I mentioned, it seems to describe that those were kept inside that pouch within the breastplate. Okay. Verse 31. "Thou shalt make the robe of the ephod olive blue." Now, this was a one-piece garment. In fact, we'll go ahead and read it. "There shall be a hole in the top of it, in the midst thereof. It shall have a binding of woven work round about the whole of it, as it were the whole of a habergeon, that it be not rent. And beneath upon the hem of it thou shalt make pomegranates of blue and of purple and of scarlet round about the hem thereof, and the bells of gold between them round about, and a golden bell and a pomegranate, a golden bell and a pomegranate upon the hem of the robe round about. And it shall be upon Aaron to minister, and his sound shall be heard when he goeth in unto the holy place before the Lord, and when he cometh out, that he die not." We'll stop there. So this robe, this blue robe, it actually went on first, and then the ephod went over the top of that, and then the girdle and the breastplate. Okay? I don't know if I'm describing it very well, but it was supposed to be a one piece, woven, not seamed. My shirt has a seam here where it's been put together. That's because they had to have so much material to make it. They didn't have one piece of material that was big enough. This was one piece. It had a hole cut out here in the neck of it, and then that had a piece that was sewed on so that, verse 32, that it be not rent or torn. Okay? And again, it's very specific in its description, how it's to be made. It was blue, and then verse 33, upon the hem of it thou shalt make the pomegranates of blue, and of purple, and of scarlet, round about the hem thereof, and bells of gold between them round about. Verse 35 tells us the bells of gold were for what purpose? So as he was working in the Holy of Holies, yes, and if they went silent, they knew they needed to drag him out. So,
Who else do we know of that had a robe with one piece?
Jesus, yeah.
Piece?
Yeah.
That's why they cast lots for it.
Yeah. So that it wasn't torn. That's prophesied in the Old Testament. All right. Verse 36. Thou shalt make a plate of pure gold, and grave upon it, like the engravings of a signet, holiness to the Lord. And thou shalt put it on a blue lace, that it may be upon the mitre, upon the forefront of the mitre it shall be. And it shall be upon Aaron's forehead, that Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things, which the children of Israel shall hallow in all their holy gifts, and it shall be always upon his forehead, that they may be accepted before the Lord. Now, what's it describing here for us? The cap, the hat. How much description is of the actual cap? We're just told, a mitre, which some say is like a turban. I don't know. But really the description that's given to them here is of what? The plate, verse 36, thou shalt make a plate of pure gold, engrave upon it, like the engravings of a signet, holiness to the Lord. What purpose? It was to go upon the forefront of the mitre. It was supposed to go on Aaron's head, that Aaron may bear the iniquity of the holy things which the children of Israel shall hallow in all their holy gifts, and it shall be always upon his forehead, that they may be accepted before the Lord. Holiness to the Lord. Now, when the priesthood began to veer off, can you imagine the priest, the high priest, wearing this, with this in mind, as they're offering sacrifice to false gods? You know, that struck me as I was looking at this. That was to be a permanent reminder. Verse 39, thou shalt embroider the coat of fine linen, thou shalt make the mitre of fine linen, thou shalt make the girdle of needlework. And for Aaron's sons thou shalt make coats, and thou shalt make for them girdles, and bonnets shalt thou make for them for glory and for beauty. And thou shalt put them upon Aaron thy brother, and his sons with him, and shalt anoint them, and consecrate them, and sanctify them, that they may minister unto me in the priest's office. And thou shalt make them linen breeches, to cover their nakedness. Everybody knows what breeches are, right? Nowadays, I wasn't sure if, I think that's more of a southern term, but I used to get my breeches tanned all the time. Verse 42, and thou shalt make them linen breeches to cover their nakedness, from the loins even unto the thighs they shall reach, and they shall be upon Aaron and upon his sons when they come in unto the tabernacle of the congregation, or when they come near unto the altar to minister in the holy place, that they bear not iniquity and die. It shall be a statute forever unto him and his seed after him. Any other thoughts or comments on this? There's a lot there, and there's a lot of meaning behind it all. All right, chapter 29 goes into the consecration of Aaron and his sons. And it really ties with what's later on. We're at 10:28. We'll see. Verse 1. And this is the thing that thou shalt do unto them to hallow them, to minister unto me in the priest's office. Take one young bullock and 2 rams without blemish, and unleavened bread, cakes unleavened, tempered with oil, and wafers unleavened, anointed with oil, of wheat and flour shalt thou make them. Thou shalt put them in one basket, and bring them in the basket with the bullock and the 2 rams. And Aaron and his sons thou shalt bring unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and shalt wash them with water. Thou shalt take the garments, and put upon Aaron the coat, and the robe of the ephod, and the ephod, and the breastplate, and gird him with the curious girdle of the ephod, and thou shalt put the mitre upon his head, and put the holy crown upon the mitre. Then shalt thou take the anointing oil, and pour it upon his head, and anoint him. Now, we'll stop there, and we'll come back. But what is this describing here? There was a process that would be implemented, whereby before the sacrifices, the priest had to prepare themselves. It included washing, it included dressing, it included anointing, but this was the implementation for the very first time. Who performed this?
The Levites.
It's sort of,
It's
and that could be, and honestly, I agree with you.
It's Aaron's lineage that's being anointed.
Yes, yes. The way this is stated here, I almost think that Moses, Aaron's brother, who was a Levite, was the one who was instructed to do this initial consecration of those that would serve in this office. After this, the priests would do it themselves as part of their regular duties.
But they were dressed, and the high priest at least was dressed in a specific order.
Yes, that's right. In addition to that, we have several elements here of a young bullock, 2 rams without blemish, unleavened bread, cakes unleavened, tempered with oil, and wafers unleavened, anointed with oil, of wheaten flour shalt thou make them. What was the purpose of these? Before they could ever do anything on behalf of the children of Israel, what did they have to do?
Offer for their own sins.
They had to offer for their own sins. And that's what this was all about. So this is really describing sort of a one-time initiating of sacrifice. This is a little different, I think, than the sacrifices that we'll see a little later on in the same chapter. So,
Well, it could have been, they had all day, so Moses could have dressed all 5 of them.
yeah. I wouldn't have wanted that job.
But if he had help, it would have been the Levites.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Verse 10. Thou shalt cause a bullock to be brought before the tabernacle of the congregation. Now, where was this performed? I just read it. Yeah, before the tabernacle of the congregation, outside, where it was visible and viewable by all. Okay? Thou shalt cause a bullock to be brought forth before the tabernacle of the congregation, and Aaron and his son shall put their hands upon the head of the bullock, and thou shalt kill the bullock before the Lord by the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and thou shalt take of the blood of the bullock and put it upon the horns of the altar with thy finger, and pour all the blood beside the bottom of the altar. Now, just that description in itself, and this is just the beginning, gives you a little bit of an indication of the bloody mess that's about to proceed. Verse 13, thou shalt take all of the fat that covered the inwards, and the caul that is above the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, and burn them upon the altar. But the flesh of the bullock, and his skin, and his dung, shalt thou burn with fire without the camp. It is a sin offering. Thou shalt also, I'll pause there. What's significant about this part of it being done without, what's it mean without the camp?
On the outside of the camp.
On the outside. What's significant about that?
Away from the camp.
Away from the camp.
Jesus was crucified outside the gate.
That's right, outside the gate. Verse 15, thou shalt also take 1 ram, and Aaron and his son shall put their hands upon the head of the ram. Thou shalt slay the ram. Thou shalt take his blood and sprinkle it round about upon the altar. Thou shalt cut the ram in pieces, and wash the inwards of him and his legs, and put them unto his pieces, and unto his head. Thou shalt burn the whole ram upon the altar. It is a burnt offering unto the Lord. It is a sweet savor, an offering made by fire unto the Lord. And thou shalt take the other ram, and Aaron and his son shall put their hands upon the head of the ram. Now, Then shalt thou kill the ram, and take of his blood, and put it upon the tip of the right ear of Aaron, and upon the tip of the right ear of his sons, and upon the thumb of their right hand, and upon the great toe of their right foot, and sprinkle the blood upon the altar round about. And thou shalt take of the blood that is upon the altar, and of the anointing oil, and sprinkle it upon Aaron, and upon his garments, and upon his sons, and upon the garments of his sons with him, and he shall be hallowed, and his garments, and his sons' garments with him. Also thou shalt take of the ram the fat, and the rump, and the fat that covereth the inwards, and the caul above the liver, and the 2 kidneys, and the fat that is upon them, and the right shoulder, for it is a ram of consecration, and 1 loaf of bread, and 1 cake of oiled bread, and 1 wafer out of the basket of the unleavened bread that is before the Lord. Thou shalt put all in the hands of Aaron, and in the hands of his sons, and shalt wave them for a wave offering before the Lord. And thou shalt receive them of their hands, and burn them upon the altar for a burnt offering, for a sweet savor before the Lord. It is an offering made by fire unto the Lord. Thou shalt take the breast of the ram of Aaron's consecration, and wave it for a wave offering before the Lord, and it shall be thy part. And thou shalt sanctify the breast of the wave offering, and the shoulder of the heave offering, which is waved, and which is heaved up of the ram of the consecration, even of that which is for Aaron, and of that which is for his sons. And it shall be Aaron's and his sons by a statute forever from the children of Israel, for it is a heave offering. And it shall be a heave offering from the children of Israel of the sacrifice of their peace offerings, even their heave offering unto the Lord. Let's pause there just for a second. Bullock, 2 rams, and then we have the bread and cakes that were unleavened, wafers unleavened, the oil. Why didn't they just have a ram? Why didn't they just have a bullock? Why did they go through with all of these animals? Could have simplified it, right? I mean, we're all about efficiency today. If this was today, would we have a microwave out there? And
Well,
There was a pattern, they had to follow the pattern. God gave them the pattern.
and the purpose of this is, it was, as Homer said, it was a pattern of what Jesus was going to do. One animal could not portray all of the suffering that Christ did.
that's exactly right. His shed blood on the cross, his taking upon him our sins, his crucifixion outside the gate. It required the limitations of these elements required multiple sacrifices.
I don't remember all of it, and I'm sure y'all don't, but at one time, a good many of us I went through a detailed account from Leviticus chapter 16, the Day of Atonement.
Yeah, I wish you were up here.
One day.
Yeah, I wish you were up here doing that.
And that was just one day.
Yeah. We know Jesus went to the cross. He shed his blood for our sins. Gave his life for us that we might have life. But beyond that, we take for granted what all Jesus went through to accomplish what he accomplished for us. And, as we look at these sacrifices, some of these were simply because of the limitations of sinful man. The priest, there had to be extra steps added because they were like you and I. They were in flesh. And they weren't perfect, so they had to first offer for themselves. They had to wash. There were certain things that had to be done to consecrate them before they then could in turn act on behalf of us. Did Jesus have to go through those pieces of it? No. Jesus was already deity, God, perfect. So there were parts that had to be added because of the sinfulness of many men that were interceding on behalf of.
You need to remember also that his sacrifice is why we don't have to do all these today.
suffering outside the gate, he's been rejected by his people, his
Yeah.
very own. Imagine, I've been kind of associated with Brookside since 1985. Some of you are charter members. Imagine that the church would single you out and say, we don't want you here no more.
Yeah.
Please leave. Feel the rejection.
Yeah. And this was.
That was added to his burden. I mean, he's God and he knows what they're going to do, but in the flesh he experienced it. He experienced what we feel.
Yeah. That's right.
I know that's so because Hebrews says so.
Yeah. That's exactly. Anything else? We're out of time.